Hey guys, last video was the intermediate. I'm redoing the boarding video, and this one is the advanced, essentially 4K or 3.8K and higher. Now, in the advanced video, this is gonna be. I'm gonna try to not overlap too much from the previous video, but let's be honest, you lazy people probably didn't watch the intermediate video, right? So, let's just go over essentially everything. So, starting, you have two words. So where are those two wards going to go? Right. Two wards you can obviously only cover two lanes. So one lane you're gonna not give vision to. So it's not as difficult a decision as it would seem. Now, the first thing you have to ask yourself is the offlane. Does the offlane require a ward? Because most of the time the offlane is going to be the crucial deciding factor. And if the offlane doesn't need ward, fine, fantastic. You put a ward in mid, you put a ward in your safe lane, and you're done. But the offlane is the deciding factor. So let's cover that first. If you have a hero in the offlane, somebody like a Bristleback, a Slardar, or somebody who can't, or a Phoenix, somebody who extremely important for them to get levels, and essentially they can't really go into the jungle and farm jungle or do anything else. Like a Spirit Breaker, he can't farm jungle, but he can sure as hell gank anybody on the map. So Spirit Breaker doesn't need the ward too much, but heroes like Bristleback and Slardar and an Omni Knight offlane or something like that, they desperately need a ward over around here, maybe even but they need to know if they're going to be ganked. They need to be safe with getting XP here. So you hand one. The place I like to ward or radiant is this spot or even this spot. Anything in this box on this side, because then you have decent vision of anybody coming to gank you. You have some vision of this rune, and you have blocked this camp. And these days, people aren't really like the common place to ward is here. So whoever puts a sentry, they're just gonna preemptively in higher levels. They're gonna preemptively put a sentry here, so their sentry will be wasted. And obviously, similar situation over here, but it's obviously not as amazing because this does not stretch to the high ground and the small camp. So having a ward over here anywhere in this camp is pretty useless. So the place I like to ward is right here. You might think that this is kind of useless, but honestly, trust me, I've warded here so many times. It never. One time, somebody actually placed a ward over a sentry ward over here, and a sentry ward over here. Actually, who am I lying? I actually got this done to me. Somebody placed a ward over here the first time I saw this, and I actually placed these two wards, and I couldn't believe that the observer somebody put an observer over here. Like, what the hell? Why would you do that? But apparently, it's actually really really good because it provides vision to your mid laner if the safe lane supports are trying to go and gank and whatnot. But anyway, moving on. So that's the offlane covered, right? We're still in the early so starting part of the game. For the mid lane, a mid ward is actually super crucial if the mid laner requires or benefits from high ground vision. Heroes like Sniper, Queen of Pain, Tinker, rockets on or Tinker, and these things. Like you need to think about, okay, does my mid laner benefit from having high ground vision, or even if there's a pudge in the enemy team, like you want to have high ground vision so that your mid laner can sort of guess where the hook is going to come from, actually, even Mirana or any sort of skill shots, or when you've got a Queen of Pain in the enemy team, if the Queen of Pain is throwing out daggers from shadows, it's hard to dodge those, even if you are a puck or a TA. So having these wards are extremely important for your mid laner. And then if your mid laner has, a ranged mid laner who can dish out a lot of damage, like an Exort Invoker or a Clinks with the Searing Arrows or an OD and things like that, so they will benefit so much from high ground vision because they'll be able to use their skills on uphill, and the enemy will not be able to hide from them. And essentially, a ward in this lane is the ward that I've spoken most about in my support videos, the support coaching videos. And this ward essentially should be placed. What does this ward do? It gives you vision of the offlaner. When do you need the vision of the offlaner? When you're trying to zone him out, when he's not at the creep wave. Obviously, if he's at the creep wave, you can see him. So if you're trying to zone him out, you want to make sure you see where the hell he is. If he's going around these trees, if he's gone back outside of there, where the hell is he? So if there's a solo offlaner who you can zone, right? If you're a Rubik and the enemy has a Timbersaw, for example, you're not gonna do anything. So there's no point putting a so if there's a solo offlaner who you can zone, place a ward. Otherwise, don't waste your ward over here for your safe lane. Now, obviously, once you get your third ward, which is 30 seconds or 1 minute into the game, whenever you get it, make sure to place it at the rune if you haven't done already. One of the Actually, I didn't speak about the mid ward, like where the mid ward should be placed. Now, the mid ward that I like a lot that I recently discovered for the Radiant side, and the enemy team will not actually see you on the minimap when you do this. If you walk up over here and place a ward over here, they will not see you placing this ward. And this is a really amazing ward because it gives you high ground vision. It gives you very decent high ground. It gives you vision of the rune, and it gives you a decent idea of anybody coming to gank. Because a lot of the times when I try to come and gank, I like when I'm dire and I'm trying to come gank the mid laner, I'll take this path. I'll go around this area and I'll hide in the trees, and with either of these wards, you can see that happening. So the mid laner is secured. Up when I place a ward as the dire, I like to hide in these trees and place a ward over here. Again, gives decent vision of the mid lane. So also in the back of the tower, so you can see somebody TPing in or not. So this ward, if you're dire, is a very sneaky ward. Also very good ward for both sides is this one, both radiant and dire starting ward. So these are all the words that you can utilize. Now, moving forward, like as soon as you get the next word, you want to make sure you have that word at the rune. Now, obviously, if you're radiant, you're gonna secure this rune, and if you're dire, you're gonna secure the top rune. So having any of these words, like I spoke about this particular word in the last videos, it's not gonna get dewarded because most of the time, when somebody's gonna deward, usually they come up and they place a ward either sentry ward over here or here, and this actually does not catch this deep ward in. So it's pretty decent. It's a pretty decent ward and helps out a lot when it comes to higher level games and people dewarding and whatnot. Having the rune ward is so crucial for the mid laner. I really highly recommend that you try to get that ward as quickly as possible. Like try to buy it as quickly as possible, like before the 2 minute mark, because the mid laner is normally gonna get the bottle at about 2 minutes. So you put the ward on the courier, and when the mid laner is getting his bottle, you can actually start moving to after the bottle is get the ward around here, especially like you'll be moving towards this bounty rune, so you can try to get the ward at the same time and place it, and that's it. Rune. Okay, so moving on, I spoke a lot about having objective vision, but there's a little bit extra in the higher levels. You want to secure farm. Now around the 4-ish minute mark, right? Around the 4 minute mark, if you have placed the ward around your safe lane, that'll be about to get expired. But what is really important is having a ward up here. You want to make sure you see either a ward up there on this area, or a ward over here, or a ward here. Now I like this one obviously because it essentially covers both these areas. And the reason why this ward around here is important, and obviously when it comes to this side, we're talking about a ward up here. The reason why this ward is so important is because this is around the time your safe laner might get ganked from incoming somebody TPing into maybe this lane, right? And it's not just this time, but for the next like 5 minutes or so. And you want to have this for as long as the safe laner is farming. Now, if we look at a ward combination now, it's really, really super important. Even if this tower is dead, now when you're taking this tower, this ward is so crucial because it gives you all this air vision and you can take this tower safely. But even after this tower is gone, you need to secure your safe laners, your carries farm in the jungle. Essentially, you need to secure your jungle, and you need to do that with a ward combination. Now, this particular ward over here will cover anybody trying to gank from this side and from this side. Essentially, this side and essentially this side will be covered into your jungle. But obviously, this opening is not covered. So with this ward, you cover effectively this part of the map, like this one, a bit bigger, but you get the point. And then if you place a ward either over here or even over here, if you suspect this one will get dewarded, then essentially, if you look at the map, you are securing for your team roughly about this much area of the map. Most importantly, you're securing this jungle, and that's the key. And you want to use this ward combos throughout the game. When you are trying to secure the enemy side of the jungle. Like, what are the ways the enemy can come into the jungle? One of the ways, obviously, is the shrine or any of these uphill ramps. So you put a ward anywhere around this area, or even this one. You secured this entire entry. And the next one is obviously these two ramps, and placing a ward up here secures entry into these two. Obviously, if this tower is already taken, then that's essentially when you are trying to secure the jungle. So by having these two wards, what you're actually accomplishing is you're securing this entire area of the map. Even though you've just got vision on these two spots, you're actually securing this entire. So warding in combination, using your wards in combination is actually super important. Now, talking a little bit more on objective-based wards, I covered a lot about objectives, towers being objectives in the previous video, but I never really covered Roshan, and that's because people below put too much emphasis on Roshan. Now, when you're covering Roshan, it's really interesting. Roshan has this one entrance only, right? So when
Things
you
get
are
mysterious,
radiant,
ain't they?
uh, some for some reason people really like to put a ward up here as radiant, and the problem with the ward up here is you actually do not cover this side. So this ward, stop placing the like. Even if you see people coming in from this side, like why would you approach from this side anyway? The Roshan entrance is not that in that direction. So this approach is bad anyway. So you need to place a ward over here and preferably even a sentry so that you can see people invis or whatever. So a ward up here covers this entire area, which means the entrance towards any approach towards the entrance is covered. If you are dire, it's a very similar situation. Now, for dire, it's slightly better because if you place a ward up here, the unfortunate thing is it doesn't actually cover, uphill over here. But you can actually do one step up in that you can actually place a ward over here and a ward over here if required, because this ward will cover approaches from this side, and then this ward covers any approach coming in from this side. Now, obviously, if you do not have this ward already placed, and if it's an emergency, you can just place this damn ward and it'll cover this entire area, and you're good to go. So essentially, for Roshan, when you're taking Roshan, ward over here and here, depending on whether you're radiant or whether so we've talked about tower vision. It's really important when you're taking a tower to have vision on the tower. We've talked about securing jungle when you're trying to secure your own jungle, or if there's an enemy anti-mage or somebody and you want to make sure you have vision in the enemy jungle. Then you want to do use ward combinations for your enemy jungle. We've talked about making sure there's a bloody ward over here for your safe laner in the early game, early to mid game, so that a safe laner can farm this lane very safely. Now, this is like I want to emphasize one more time: a ward up here and a ward up here. Um, After about 4 minutes, it's really important to place and keep refreshing it. Like if the enemy dewards it, obviously I don't mean just keep placing this bloody ward, but try to smoke and place a ward maybe over here or around here, and try to deward this as well. Maybe even deward and place a ward again. Catch the enemy if they're coming in to deward afterwards. Catch the support hero or something like that. But it's really crucial to have vision for your safe laner. So that he can farm. Another important ward that a safe laner, if this ward is getting dewarded constantly, and you can also place a ward up here which does a similar story. It covers this side, but you want to use this in combination with a ward over here so that your safe laner is actually protected in their jungle. Kind of, this one is not obviously as great as this one over here, but if you're getting dewarded, let's be honest, you have to come up with wacky areas and wacky places to ward and deward. Now, when it comes to defending high ground, you need to have vision. Let's say people are approaching from this side. Having a ward up here is pretty decent, but it's gonna get dewarded. So what I like to place is a ward over here or a ward over here. And obviously, when we're looking at the enemies on the dire side, we're talking about these two wards up here for the mid lane. In the mid lane, you can actually place a ward over here to have better vision, and if you're dire, you can place a ward pretty much anywhere around here. Essentially, will do. Uh, but make sure you have decent vision. Now, another ward I like to place for the mid lane is over here because it does actually give you decent vision. And usually, if you're 5k or above, people when they're coming in to push high ground, they might actually place a sentry, especially over here, especially if there is an invis hero, and they'll catch your wards and they'll deward them. So having a ward like a funky ward again, like this one, actually gives you a really good benefit uh, because they won't get dewarded. Um, when you're pushing high ground, make sure to have a deep ward. I spoke about this in the last video. Make sure that you either use a smoke or glimmer cape or invis, and make sure you use shift Q so that you can uh, place this ward as quickly as possible. Like the worst thing you can do is just stand here and try to find the right place to ward and then move back. Like make sure you know where you're gonna place the ward, and like when you this is not gonna work. When you have an observer ward, you can actually like hover over it and know exactly which location will give you the best vision. Like this location, you can place a ward, but it's the worst ward you can do. So like a ward over here is the best, obviously. So you want to make sure that you walk all the way to the edge, shift Q, and then place a ward so that you can get that deep ward. Yeah, that pretty much covers everything, all the wards, and all the situations, and there's nothing really left. Make sure you know if your team is defending. When they're defending, place defensive boards. Defensive boards being, protecting your defensive towers. Like if you have your tier two still available, make sure you and the enemy team is stronger and you're losing fights and they're pushing. Make sure to ward around your defensive towers. And if you are the ones who are being the aggressors and you want to take towers and whatnot, try to plan like 2 or 3 minutes ahead in time and place those deep wards for the enemy towers. Try to get smoke ganks before you place wards so that you're not just going uphill over here and then because the entire enemy team was standing up here waiting for you. This actually happened to me quite recently as well. So, yeah, scars are fresh. And I think that pretty much covers the entire warding video. And that's it. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below and I'll try to address them as quickly as possible. And that's it for today, guys. Speak to you later.